and welcome back to another episode of A Better You. I am your host, Fernanda Ramirez, and welcome to the first episode of 2025. I can't even believe I'm saying that, honestly. It doesn't really roll off the tongue yet, and I'm not even gonna make the joke that I'm mentally still in like September of last year because it's getting old. It's getting crazy. I cannot believe how fast time is flying by. I feel like if I had to talk to me from a year ago today, like the beginning of 2024 Fern, I think I would probably have a panic attack if I knew everything that happened over this past year. And I first want to say, I am so sorry, you guys. I kind of went ghost mode for a little bit. I haven't posted a podcast episode in a while, and I haven't spoken to you guys since like the beginning of December or the end of November or something. I think my last episode was on how to make the Christmas season your best one yet and how to really romanticize the season. And for one, I want to say happy holidays, you guys. I hope you had such a good Christmas, a good New Year's, that you have been spending time with your friends, with your family. I hope you guys had, a good Christmas. Hopefully that episode actually helped you guys out and you did romanticize the season to the best that you could. I hope that your New Year's went well. As you guys know, or if you didn't, I'll give you a little bit of a recap. I recently have gotten out of a relationship in September, and I feel like for a lot of people, maybe a breakup isn't that big of a deal. Maybe me saying that it happened now almost like 4 months ago feels like it was a long time, but considering that I dated the person for so long, it just feels like my life has been recently compartmentalized in like pre-breakup and post-breakup. And although I'm feeling significantly better, I'm feeling really good right now, I feel like it's a weird feeling when you haven't been single since you were like 17, that everything you do feels brand new. I don't know why, it just is like that. And so every month I feel like I've been really prioritizing healing and exploring and saying yes and doing new things. And it just feels like every single month that passes, so much has happened. I don't even know how to explain it, but anyways, every single month has felt revolutionary to my own life and to my own healing and to my own growing. And it just feels like I'm taking 20 steps instead of one per each month. Does that make sense? Anyways, I keep saying I'm going to make an episode on like my healing and my reflections, but it just doesn't feel like the time yet. But something I will say, and something that I've been reflecting on, is the fact that a lot of the times when I post podcast episodes, a lot of my episodes are kind of me teaching you guys something or showing you something or telling you my reflections, and they're based on my lived experiences. But right now, because I'm in such a transformational period where I feel like I'm experiencing so much newness, it's hard for me to like verbalize even what I'm thinking about because I haven't even like processed what I'm going through. Does that make sense? And I feel like I'm someone who really likes to process their emotions and their thoughts verbally, but I, for some reason, haven't picked up my microphone for the past like month, and I feel like I had some sort of mental block with doing so. Like I just felt like I didn't really know what to say yet just because I feel like mentally I've been going through a lot. Anyways, I feel like I always feel the need to say like, it's not that bad, I swear guys, like I'm not down bad, and I'm not. But even if I was, I feel like a goal for mine this next year is to embrace the imperfection and not always act like things are okay and that I'm okay. And if there is a time where I am sad or I am going through something, it doesn't take away from all the healing that has happened. And I think it's very important to remember that like healing isn't linear, and sometimes you feel on top of the world and sometimes something can trigger you and you'll get really sad for a minute and then the next day you feel good again, or maybe you're sad for a few days and then you feel good again. And I feel like anyone that's going through a breakup recently or in the past year, in the past few months, or just they're going through it, I feel like that's just a good reminder for you. And it doesn't even have to be a breakup. It could be like anything that you've been through recently. Just remember to be compassionate towards yourself. And if you've been doing good for all this time and then all of a sudden you feel really down on yourself, don't feel like embarrassed or ashamed or feel like that healing was all for nothing, because everything counts and you never know what's gonna like trigger just like emotions that haven't been processed yet. And honestly, I feel like it's an invitation to look at maybe your situation from an angle that you haven't looked at it at yet. Anyways, all of that is to say that I felt like for this past month, I've been very in my head in terms of the type of content that I want to create and the podcast and just like speaking. And I just haven't felt like speaking. But anyways, it's very hard to do that when your job is also to speak and to be consistent. And I feel like it is hard as a creative to sometimes honor your own creative process and your feelings while also being like, you've got a schedule, this is a job. And that is a part of the dilemma with making your hobbies your job. But nevertheless, I love it. I'm here. I'm excited to talk. And the last thing I want to say before getting into today's episode is that I hope that you guys have been having a great 2025 so far. I hope that you have made some resolutions maybe. I would love to hear them if you want to DM them to me or tell me about what the past little bit has been looking like for you, because I'm so curious and I feel like I haven't spoken to my friends in a while. And I will also be making a little New Year's episode or an episode talking about things that I learned last year or just like lessons. I don't know. I feel like I have so much wisdom to speak and to get out. So anyways, I guess that's a little bit of an update on my life. Hopefully that wasn't too long or too long-winded, but you know, I felt like I owed you guys a little bit of an explanation for where I've been. And other than that, life has been so fun recently. I feel like I've had so many new experiences. I've been saying yes so much, both good and bad, but mainly good. I feel rebirthed is what I feel. I feel like the youngest I've ever been, which I literally am in this current moment, but like extra young, extra, like life is being very fruitful to me. Anyways, today's episode, we're talking about boundary setting. Now, this is so important for a number of reasons, and there's a reason why I think right now is a great time to talk about this. But for one, boundary setting is something that is so important, and it really sets the tone for how you want to be treated and for the way that you also treat other people. I feel like boundary setting is something that I've had to learn to do, obviously, over the course of my life, whether that's with my family or my friends or my relationship. And I feel like it is especially relevant to me right now as I'm navigating singlehood. And, you know, I feel like conversations with an ex or meeting new people or just, you know, setting the standard for how I want to be treated from here on out. I just feel like boundary setting has been very prominent in my life, and it's been something that I've been really reflecting on and thinking like, how do I want to enter this new era of my life in a way that I'm carrying myself with respect and I'm honoring my own boundaries and I'm not just only saying yes and forgetting like what my boundaries truly are. So for all those reasons is kind of why I decided that this would be a good time to talk about this, as well as you guys have been requesting an episode on how to stop people pleasing. And we're going to talk about all of this today, which I'm very excited for. I have a whole little notebook with a bunch of things I want to talk about, as well as I have a Google Doc, and I've done a lot of research on this, and we're just going to talk about everything that has to do with boundary setting. And now we're just going to do a quick word from our sponsor, and that is Hinge. So thank you to Hinge for sponsoring today's episode. As you guys know, this past year I have gotten out of a relationship, and while it has been very tough, to say the least, it has been an absolute catalyst for my own personal growth and overall development. As I head into the new year, I've been reflecting on my own dating goals and all of that, what I want to embrace, what I want to embody, and what I want to give out during 2025. I've realized how important it is to show up as you in every aspect of life, including dating. There's just something so powerful about knowing who you are, what you bring to the table, and the energy you want to attract into your life. This is where Hinge comes in. Hinge is bringing awareness to encourage daters to reflect in learnings of their dating journey over the past year and refresh their Hinge profile to better represent who they've grown into today. I feel like this campaign really resonates with me, as living in alignment with my morals and my values is extremely important to me, and I'm constantly looking for ways to reflect and making sure that I present myself as honestly and as authentically as I can. Not only that, but since we are talking about boundary setting and our own standards in this episode, I felt that this was the perfect time for you and I to reflect on our own journeys and tweak existing patterns and actions. I created my own Hinge account, and it was so interesting to see how I would create my profile to match my intentions when I choose to meet new people. It's all about taking a step back and asking yourself, how can I present who I truly am, and how can I call in connections that align with my values and visions for the future? For me personally, this could even mean letting go of the pressure to perform or fit into someone else's idea of perfect, and instead rather focus on being unapologetically me. Some ideas for how you can do a little bit of a refresh on your profile is by updating your photos to best show all the different facets of your own personality and or lifestyle, or you can update prompts that spark interesting conversations, which is my personal favorite. One of the prompts that I put on my profile was qualities I believe my dream partner should have, or qualities I think we would best get along with, or qualities that I feel would allow me to best connect with somebody, which for me, that was ambition, somebody that is into wellness, and somebody that can both plan a perfect itinerary while also being a little bit spontaneous and living for the adventure. By updating my profile this way, I can ensure that the person I attract will be someone who I already share common values and interests with. I personally believe that the goal is to attract someone who complements your energy and supports your dreams while also inspiring you to grow. Let me tell you about some of the other prompts I made for my Hinge profile. I have been continuously rearranging my photos to decide which ones align with me best. This is one of the photos that I really liked. I feel like it's very cute, wholesome, I'm smiling, it embodies my energy. I hope someone would see this and think she seems very kind and sweet, and that's exactly the energy I'm trying to give off. Some other photos I added onto my profile kind of show my style and some of my interests. The first photo, I'm actually at a theater, so hopefully maybe the person seeing it can see that I enjoy aesthetics and art, being in beautiful places like that. So maybe we can visit something like that, but I'm picking these photos a little bit more intentionally, so if someone sees it, they get my vibe straight off the bat. I also added a photo of me in this long gown so they can kind of see that I like to dress up, go out. One of the prompts I used was my greatest strength, and for my response, I put balancing espresso martinis and dance floors at 2 a.m. plus Pilates and matcha by 9 a.m. So this way they can see the duality of my personality. Are you getting what I'm putting down here? I love an espresso martini, I love caffeine, I love going out, dancing, staying up late, but I don't neglect my morning workout or the matcha. So whoever's reading this can see that I'm clearly into wellness. I like to wake up early. I can do both. You see the vibe. I also kind of tried to make it a little bit silly, you know? So whoever's reading it kind of can see my vibe. I added a photo of me traveling, which I feel like really encapsulates my vibe and what I like to do. Another prompt idea that you can use is this year I really want to and blank. You can put whatever you want to try this next year. Honestly, I had such a hard time picking what I wanted to do for this prompt because there's so many things I want to do next year, but I just kind of kept it simple and easy and I said get out of my comfort zone. That can mean a variety of things, so whoever wants to slide up on that prompt, honestly, there's a lot of ways to go about that, and I feel like kind of will give me a sense of their vibe depending on how they answer. But yeah, there's so many things you can do for that prompt, and honestly, Hinge has so many interesting prompts that it was really hard to pick which ones I even wanted to use. As for some other photos I put down, I put one where I was actually celebrating a podcast milestone, so I'm holding my camera so they can see I kind of like to film, I like to do all that kind of stuff. And then the last photo I put was a picture of me on my birthday, which I really like. It's a recent photo, up to date, and I've got my long extensions, which makes me feel really confident. So anyways, that is kind of what I have my Hinge profile looking like right now. I'm so curious to see what's on yours, but if you are on Hinge, I highly recommend reflecting on what you truly want, what you deserve, and how you can best take that insight and weave it into your profile for a little 2025 New Year refresh. Make sure you head over to Hinge to update or refresh your profile to ensure that you're showing up as the most authentic version of you. Now let's get back to the episode. You guys know I love starting these episodes with a little bit of a definition. So for one, what are boundaries and what does it mean to set them? I have here written down that setting boundaries is the process of establishing limits and guidelines for how you want to be treated by others. They are limits we set for ourselves, and everyone's boundaries are different, and they are based on what is personally important to us. Now again, there is so many different types of boundaries, and they can be emotional, physical, they can be boundaries for your time, at your work, or even financial. So I'm going to go through all the different types of boundaries, and while I go through these, some personal examples will probably pop up for you, and you'll kind of, think to yourself where you kind of stand in these, and I'll give you some of my own personal ones. So for example, the first type of boundary that you can be setting is emotional. So this is protecting your feelings and your energy. An example of this could be setting a boundary when someone is trying to vent and kind of dump their emotions on you, but you are not in the emotional state to take that on. This is one of those scenarios where you might have to tell them hey, listen, I'm not in the space to take all of this on right now. Is there another time I can help you? Or can I help you find a resource for someone else to talk to about this, like a professional? That is an example. Another type of emotional boundary could be if somebody is disrespecting you, they are criticizing you, judging you, letting them know that that is not the way you like to be treated, and that you won't tolerate that. And if it keeps going, you will walk away. I know for me, I don't want to talk too much about my past relationship or my current, personal life too much, just because it is personal. But I feel like there are some things that are not really a secret and, I would tell anyone. But for example, me and my ex went no contact after we broke up, and there was a few times where there was potential that we could talk again. And though we did have a few instances of having a little bit of a closure talk or whatever, I felt like it was important for me to set those emotional boundaries to not continue engaging in that because it wasn't helping either parties in terms of healing. And that is a scenario where you might not want to set an emotional boundary, but it is for the best, it is for the betterment of your own emotional state, and it is something that you have to do. And speaking to what the definition actually is, setting those boundaries is setting the standard for how you want to be treated and to not get taken advantage of, especially, for me, and this goes for anyone in a similar situation, going through a breakup or anything, you are in a vulnerable state. So making sure that you are staying true to your own boundaries is so helpful for you and the other person, even if they don't see it. The next type of example of a boundary is a physical boundary. So this is respecting your space and body. For example, asking someone not to invade your personal space. This could be literally literally leaving the situation. If, you and someone else are going through a confrontation, it might just be easier for you to exit the situation and literally creating a physical boundary. If someone is too close to you, ever since we're in like literally elementary school, preschool, kindergarten, they always tell you, keep your hands to yourself. You don't want to invade someone else's personal bubble. I know there's a lot of people that don't like getting their face touched or their hair touched, and them holding that boundary and saying like they don't like being touched like that is very important, and that is another example. And also, as it says, your space, it might be boundaries that you set with your home, not letting certain people come into your physical space, not letting people create a mess when it's your home. The next example is time. So this is managing commitments and saying no to preserve your bandwidth. An example of this could be, you're going to lunch with someone and you tell them that you're only going to be able to be there for 1 hour, and then they end up trying to convince you to stay longer. Having strength in that boundary and telling them like, no, I can only commit to 1 hour and I'm going to leave when that hour is done, and actually staying committed to that. Another could be if someone keeps asking you to hang out, but you have a lot going on that week, saying no, respecting that no, and kind of letting them know that maybe during the week you cannot hang and they have to respect that. I feel like I've witnessed this a lot, and an example that comes to mind is one time when I was in LA, I was at a brand dinner and I was sitting next to another girl that had to leave, and she had a strict time that she had to go home at, but she felt so guilty standing up and just kind of letting them know that she had to leave early. And I feel like in that specific case, that would have been a scenario where she should have held her boundary a little bit stronger and honored her own time and just like left when she had to, instead of feeling the need to please other people and staying a little bit longer. I feel like that's also a scenario where it's important to consider that if you don't stand up for your own boundaries, sometimes people won't remind you of yours, or they don't care enough to respect them. And so you really have to put in the extra effort to maintain those. Otherwise, you could get walked over, or you end up feeling burnt out, or you end up feeling just drained by the time that you have to leave because you overextended yourself. The next example for boundaries that you can set go within work. So setting expectations for availability outside of work hours, maybe not texting or working past 5 p.m. or on the weekends. I know my personal team, it's not maybe a traditional job, but I don't usually text my management or anything during the weekends, and that is like a boundary that they have set as well as me. I feel like this is so important, and I honestly feel like Gen Z does a really good job of this. I feel like I always see TikToks of other Gen Z like employees or people that are working like 9 to 5 or corporate jobs. They're not extending themselves past the hours that they're being paid for, whereas I feel like in past generations, maybe they would do that just because they feel like they can't say no, or they have that people-pleasing tendencies. And then the last example of ways that you could set boundaries is financial. So declining to loan money if it's not feasible for you, or I guess another example of this could be like if you're getting invited to a dinner but it is out of your budget, saying no and respecting yourself and your own budget and not pushing past that or letting someone sway you into paying more than you wanted to, or kind of ignoring your own budget to please them or to fit in. So those are a bunch of different examples of boundaries. I feel like a good idea that you can do is kind of do boundary setting journal prompts and just kind of write down what your own values are and what kind of boundaries you want to set moving forward. I feel like especially going into the new year, this is such a good time to look at yourself and think, is there something that is draining me, or someone that is making me feel resentful, or someone that is pushing me past my limit, and how can I set those boundaries better for myself? I know for me, an example of a time when I really had to set my boundaries was, after I got out of a relationship, I feel like I had a little bit of a crazy phase. Not that crazy, but I was traveling, I was saying yes, I was going out, and I wanted to honor those feelings, which were the feelings of like feeling free and feeling like I could do whatever I wanted. But I felt like at some point it was like I was just saying yes a little bit too much. I was kind of, I was running like a chicken with my head cut off. And I think it's because I hadn't even set boundaries with myself. And I think that is also super important to note. Like, boundaries are not only with other people, but they are with yourself, and they kind of keep you in check and keep you in line. And when I first became single, I feel like I didn't have any boundaries just because that was like the last thing on my mind. And now that it's been some time, I've created some more, and I feel like they are there to keep me safe and happy and not let myself get disrespected and not let myself say yes to things that feel right in the moment and then after that regret it. I just feel like it's important to do, and they kind of honor that self-respect that you have for yourself. And again, I've said it so many times, but I think it's so important. It sets the standard up for how you want to be treated treated. Setting boundaries, I feel like, is also such a key factor of self-care, and it is preserving your own mental energy and your emotions. So it is definitely a self-care ritual that I want to carry into 2025, and I want to keep on refining and, practice holding them actually and staying committed to them and not letting other people or myself kind of disrespect them or override them. Speaking of the single era, there was a while ago where I was talking to somebody that I had met, and again, I feel awkward talking about the single era just because I've never done that, and low-key my parents be listening to this. It's just awkward, okay? But a while ago I was talking to this new person and they were being so pushy, and I've never experienced this as somebody who was in a relationship for so long, and they were being so pushy for my time, for my energy, for just access to me, and I had said no so many times, and this was a scenario where I really had to hold my boundaries strong, and I had just never been so pushed. This was over text also, but I had never encountered someone so pushy, and I could imagine a lot of other people in the same scenario. You kind of get pushed and pushed and pushed until you finally end up saying yes, and I didn't say yes, thank God, but I feel like that situation in itself made me realize why this topic is so important to speak about, especially for girls younger than me watching this, but really for any age. If you have someone pushing your boundaries, it is so important to recognize that these are red flags. And if you say no once, no means no. And you should not let anyone push you to the point where you end up saying yes. If you say no 20 times and on the 21st time you say yes, it is still a no. It's not right. You're not going to feel good if you end up disrespecting yourself and, letting the other person win. And that is why boundaries are so important, and they are absolutely necessary for protecting your own mental health, reducing resentment, and fostering healthier relationships. We do not want to be in relationships or in entanglements with people who don't respect us or the boundaries that we are setting. And honoring your own boundaries is not only such a protective way to take care of yourself, but it is also going to build such strong self-worth and self-confidence and just your overall self-belief. You're going to feel so good about yourself and overall just feel like you are in control of yourself. Now, as explained, I had a situation with somebody who I do not speak to anymore. This was a very short, brief interaction I had with them. Immediately when I saw all these red flags, I was like, wow, I cannot keep talking to this person. But for a minute there, they had me fooled. But let me just tell you, let's talk about when we realize we need to set boundaries or hold our boundaries a little bit stronger. If someone is making you feel overwhelmed, unappreciated, you feel like the relationship is one-sided, or you end up hanging out with them or talking to them and you end that situation feeling worse than you even went into it, that might be signs that you need to do a little bit of self-reflection and thinking about your relationship with that person and what it is that you exactly need. If these people do not take no for a response, they are overall pushy, or you're almost avoiding being around them or wanting to talk to them, or you feel scared to set boundaries because you know that they're going to push your buttons, these are the type of people we need to look out for. And let me just say, if they keep on breaking your trust and pushing your boundaries, it is also a really, I feel pivotal moment to kind of reflect on that relationship in itself and think, is this even someone that I want in my life? If they don't respect me or the standards that I'm holding up for myself or these boundaries, do I want them around? This may be a friend, this may be a family member, this may be a relationship, and it can be really tough because, you can have such strong bonds with these people or feel like you have so much shared history or feel like they have been in your life for so long, or you might feel guilty because they did something for you, whatever it may be. It's such a tricky situation when you've known these people for so long. Obviously, like I was saying about the example earlier, it's so easy to cut someone off when you barely know them. But when you do know them for a long time, it's definitely a lot trickier. But at some point, if it is affecting your own mental health and it's really causing you a lot of pain internally, it is worth reconsidering that relationship because it's only going to make you feel worse over time. And nothing about it is feeding you. It is actually draining you. So on that note, we are going to talk about how to set these boundaries, how to actually communicate these boundaries and let people know how you're feeling and communicating them properly. So number one, after doing a little bit of reflecting, realizing what it is that they are not complying with, what boundaries they are trying to push, how they're making you feel. I honestly feel like the best way to set a boundary is just honestly, being direct, being clear, being forward, being firm, all while being respectful. Honestly, if you are setting a boundary and you're just so straightforward to the point where, like, I'm sorry, but a 10-year-old could understand what you're saying, and a full-grown adult cannot use the excuse that they don't understand what you're saying or they don't get it. You know, being so straightforward but being respectful, I feel like is the way that sometimes you need to go about it to get through to the other person's head. Being specific and being clear with what you need and reminding yourself that you don't even actually need to give excuses or reasons why. I mean, to be honest, a no is a no, but you don't need to go into depth and explain, all the reasons why you can't. An example of this could be if someone keeps pushing you to hang out on a Saturday or something and you really can't, you have work to do or you're pushed to the edge, you are too tired, just saying to that person, I need Saturday for myself to recharge. I will not be available for social plans that day. Period. End of statement. That's all you have to say. I mean, really, how far could they push you if you already said no? And honestly, if someone pushed me and kept pushing me, I would just say, I just set a boundary. Why are you trying to cross my boundary? Why are you disrespecting me? Using your tone and, even validating them, but still holding to your own standards. This could be saying, I understand you're upset right now, but I'm not in a space to discuss this. Again, mic drop, leaving it at that. I remember in that situation where I was telling you earlier about someone that kept pushing my boundaries, I straight up told them, like I was explaining it to a toddler. Unfortunately, it worked. But I was like, listen, this is the last text I'm going to send you and I'm going to set some boundaries. Number 1, do not keep contacting me. And I literally went and just listed all the boundaries that I had. And to be honest, they respected it right away. They might not have been used to someone being so straightforward and so clear, but it's what had to be done. And did they learn? Well, no, they didn't. And then I had to block them. And that was me setting another boundary. And guess what? I don't even feel bad about it. So anyways, back to it. Straightforward, honest, clear, firm, but respectful. And I feel like using I statements are really important. Like, for example, I cannot see you on this day. I have work to do. I understand that you would like me there, but I am not going to overextend myself. I need to recharge at home. I need to respect my own feelings and I need to honor my own emotions. When you say so many I statements, it's like, what can the other person say to convince you? You've already told them how you feel. You've already made it clear that you will not be doing something for that other person. And if at that point they are still disrespecting you, I think that is when creating a physical boundary is important. Leaving that conversation and saying to that person, I can't speak to you right now. If we cannot have a proper conversation without you disrespecting me, I'm going to have to leave. Exiting the conversation, exiting the situation, not seeing that person anymore, blocking them if you need to. And if it's possible for you, genuinely cutting them out of your life or kind of maybe ending that relationship might be something to consider. And I think another thing that is really important when talking about setting boundaries is being consistent in what you're saying. If you say something, you say no once, and then 2 days later you end up saying yes, that person is going to know that they will get a yes out of you if they ask, one too many times. They know, oh, she's saying no, but she doesn't actually mean no. So you don't want to be in that state. You do not want to be in the state where people think that they can push you over, or people think that your no's don't actually mean no, which is so disrespectful, first of all, but I'm just saying it how it is, because that is the case with a lot of situations. Or that person feeling like you cutting them out is not real. You cutting them out just means that you might not talk to them for a few days, but then you're going to eventually come back around. You don't want to be in that situation. So this is your reminder. If you are setting a boundary, be consistent with it, actually follow through on your word, and do it for yourself. Don't let that other person have the satisfaction of feeling like they can push down your walls if they try hard enough. I'm going to give you some other examples of respectful boundary phrases that I found online that you can maybe use in your own scenarios, or they might just, give you examples of how you could use this in real life. One being, I appreciate your opinion, but I need to make this decision for myself. Another one could be, I can't take that on right now, but I hope you find someone who can help you with that. I'm sorry, but if someone told me either of those statements, I'd say, damn, I'm gonna shut my mouth and just not say anything to you anymore. That would make me respect them. I'd be like, damn, you're so straightforward and honest, there's not even anything I can say. And that's how you earn the respect. Another example could be, I will finish this conversation when you aren't raising your voice. Another one could be, I can't answer your calls during work hours because I lose focus. I am not ready to talk about this yet. It is too personal. I feel like that's a good one for influencers when, followers are trying to push their boundaries to talk about subjects they don't feel ready to talk about yet. Another example could be, I am not looking for advice. I have this figured out. Thanks. I feel like that's actually a really good example because a lot of the time people provide unsolicited advice, and actually I might have a habit of doing that. So, I got to remind that to myself too, and that's being accountable. Another one could be, I need some time to let myself cool off. Let's talk tomorrow. Anyways, those are a bunch of examples of boundaries to set. None of them are disrespectful. None of them are going too hard. None of them should make the other person feel angry. And if they do, that is their lack of emotional maturity, let me just say, or emotional intelligence. But all of those boundaries are respectful, they're firm, they're clear, they say exactly what you're trying to say, and they should leave the other person feeling like they understand you completely. Like a 10-year-old should be able to understand that. Now, I want to give some advice to the people that might end up being pushed over, being pushed around past their boundaries. Because I feel like I have had this happen to me before. I have witnessed it before. And for one, I want to say, I found online here that if you grew up in a home where no boundaries were set or where people violated your boundaries, setting and maintaining boundaries may be difficult. So true. It is important to remember that setting boundaries is not selfish, but rather it sets the tone for healthy relationships, and it is an important part of one's own well-being. I feel like that makes sense. I mean, we've talked about it throughout this whole episode, but I feel like the key point in this is to remind yourself that it is not selfish. You shouldn't feel bad about setting boundaries or worrying about how the other person is going to feel. You need to prioritize your own emotional well-being, and that is honestly what's going to also make you be the best person for the other people that are actually healthy in your life. I also feel like if you're someone that tends to be a people pleaser or gets pushed over when they try to set boundaries, self-awareness is like the very first step to overcoming that. And the fact that you're even listening to this episode is already such a good place to start. And just keeping an open mind or even listening to this type of content, I feel like little by little will make you maybe understand better why it is so important and give you the courage to set those boundaries. I think something important to consider if you feel like you are typically somebody who ends up people pleasing or abandoning their own boundaries is why you struggle with it in the first place. Is it fear of conflict? Is it fear of having other people being upset at you? Is it the desire to be liked or validated? Do you feel like maybe you could work on your own self-esteem? Or do you feel unworthy of your own needs? Just understanding the root cause of why you end up letting other people push you past your breaking point. And I feel like a good journal prompt that you can use for this specific scenario is reflecting on a situation where you felt like your boundaries were crossed, how it made you feel, and overall just like what are your fears with setting boundaries in the first place. You could also journal about a time where you felt guilty for saying no and writing about why you felt guilty in the first place. And a good question to ask yourself is how can you reframe saying no as an act of self-care? And then one final last journal prompt that I feel like really encapsulates this little section is writing about if there are any reoccurring situations that leave you feeling drained. How can you communicate your boundaries effectively in those scenarios? Doing some journaling, figuring it out for yourself, talking about this subject to a trusted friend or even a therapist or something honestly can be so helpful, and something that I feel like if you struggle with this, it like should be a priority to kind of overcome because it really does set the tone for so many of your relationships. I also want to say you can also start off small. Even just practicing saying no more often can be really helpful. I feel like this is something that I could definitely use. I'm someone that loves to go out, and I often end up saying yes to plans even if they're last minute. And sometimes I end up thinking the next day, like, that was so not worth it. I should have just listened to my own gut. And I guess that's also important to say, listen to your gut in these situations. If something feels wrong or something feels like you shouldn't be doing it, take that instinct and that intuition of yours and actually pay attention to it. Another key factor about all of this that I feel like is really important is reminding yourself that it is okay to be uncomfortable. You should gain some comfort in the discomfort, and saying no and setting these boundaries might feel awkward at first. You might feel like kind of silly. I don't know, if you've never done it before, you might, fear that confrontation and it just feels different. But the more that you do it, the more it's going to feel like second nature. And, recently there's a book that's trending on TikTok and it's called Why Men Love Bitches. And that's actually a great book for boundary setting if you are having struggles with relationships. I bought it for my friend, but I ended up just reading it because I thought it was really interesting. And basically that book is actually about how women need to set strong boundaries when it comes to men, because sometimes men can just come and try to abuse your kindness by not listening to your boundaries, not respecting them. That whole book is like basically saying that you need to be okay with being a bitch. And you're not actually being a bitch, but like you saying no to somebody else, they might feel like you're being a bitch. It's to, again, the emotionally immature and not emotionally intelligent. But feeling okay with saying no, feeling okay with being the bad guy in someone's book if it's protecting your own peace. Just overall being okay with not always being liked. If setting your own boundary is going to cause you to be disliked, so be it. And this is especially important, and I feel like that could be a good read for any girl or guy, whoever's watching this, that is too kind or too nice and is afraid to speak their mind, reading that could be really helpful for you, and just taking in that kind of content to make you feel more firm in your decisions and to feel more firm in what you're saying. And overall, just a good reminder to yourself that this discomfort that you have, or this feeling of guilt when you're setting these boundaries, it is temporary, and the benefits of respecting yourself are long-term. I lastly just want to say, if you are struggling with boundary setting and you feel like this is a theme throughout a lot of your relationships, focus on creating friendships with people that are actually supportive. And if you do know, or you've noticed people in your life that are super accepting of the boundaries you set, hold on to them a little bit more, maybe hang out with them a little bit more often, and really just even make a list of the people that make you feel good after you finish hanging out with them, because those are the friendships and the relationships that you should be prioritizing, and the ones that you should be pouring your cup more into. I also think if setting boundaries is a little tough for you, celebrating your little wins along the way could feel great, could feel empowering. Just giving yourself a pat on the back when you do something that is hard for you, that to others might seem really easy, but to you requires a little bit more effort. Feel proud of yourself for setting those. Now, I do want to say, on the other end, if someone is holding a boundary up for you, you have to be able to acknowledge that and respect that in return, because boundaries are not a one-way street. You also need to respect other people's boundaries. And I feel like this is something that I've even had to really learn and reflect on throughout the past few years. I feel like I've talked about this situation before, but I remember there was times in the past, back when I was a youthling and I didn't understand this, maybe I would be pushing for my friends to go clubbing with me. Maybe I would be pushing my friends to stay out a little bit later, or I would tell them to stay a little bit longer when they had to go home, and they'd be like, no, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. And I'd be like, come on. And I'd be like forcing them to do it. Yeah, it was giving 19-year-old Fern, okay? We've grown since then, but I'm just saying, I remember this clearly, and I would be so annoyed when they would be so strict with their word. And I was like, God, if they say no, I really can't convince them. At the time, I was so annoyed by me not being able to push down their walls. But now that I've reflected on it, I'm like, Fernanda, those are actually good people that have self-respect and have boundaries. Like, those are good things to have. And you need to respect when other people are telling you no. You need to respect when people know what they like and what they don't like. And you don't need to force someone to like the things you like. And sometimes it's awkward when people are holding boundaries up against you, especially when you want to make something work, but you just need to accept it. If you want your own boundaries to be respected, you have to respect other people's. This could also be I don't think this has happened to me, but I feel like a scenario that I could think of is if someone didn't want to be your friend anymore, or they didn't want to invite you to something, and they confronted you over maybe actions that you were, doing, or maybe the way that you were acting, and they gave you the reasons why. It's easy to go in self-defense mode and be like, wait, no, I swear, that's not me. I didn't do that. What? But instead of taking that self-defense mode, reflecting on what they're saying, acknowledging what they're saying, maybe being a little bit more open to the idea that that is their perspective, that is their view on things, and maybe you didn't even realize that you were doing these things. If they set that boundary with you, there isn't many ways that you can fight them back on that. Obviously, you can say sorry, you can try to fix what it is inside of you that maybe you didn't realize you were doing, or the traits that you have, or ways that you've been acting in, but respecting that other person for one, even telling you the truth, or just kind of, creating some distance between you guys, accepting that that's how they feel and that is valid for them. And again, it's that self-awareness. For that situation where someone's confronting you about something you did, you should really take that into account. But if it's another scenario, like the party one that I was talking about, if someone doesn't want to go out, respect their needs without taking it too personally, because it has nothing to do with you, but rather their own emotional bandwidth. I think that's the word that you can use. It doesn't have anything to do with you. It just is them knowing what they like and what they don't like and what they're willing to do. Don't try to guilt trip them into doing what you want to do. Don't push too much. In fact, if you do those things, you might end up actually losing a good friend. It's not just the boundary that they set. It could be them actually not wanting to be your friend. And if anything, you can show some support by telling them, thank you for being honest with me. I respect that, and I respect your opinion, and I respect you for telling me. A quote that I found online was saying that your boundaries determine how much you value yourself. And I feel like that is something very important to consider. And as we end this episode, I kind of want to highlight that again and to encourage you guys to reflect on the boundaries that you want to set in this new year and the actions and the behavior that you will not be tolerating from other people. For example, for me, I will not be tolerating disrespect. I will not be tolerating anyone yelling at me, screaming at me. Although that has necessarily happened over the past time, but it's just like that is something that I absolutely would not tolerate. Someone that's overly critical, someone that's overly judgmental, somebody who is rude, somebody who is malicious. Imagine someone stealing, someone being just straight up being offensive. Like, oh my God, these are actions I will not tolerate. So you need to figure out what it is that you're not going to tolerate, what behaviors you do not want, what red flags you would absolutely run away from, and really being clear with what you won't accept from other people, and also boundaries within yourself to protect yourself from getting hurt. I encourage literally everyone of all ages to do this. It is so important, whether you're younger than me or older than me. Just taking a look at the relationships that you have in your life, figuring out how it is that you want to be treated, and reminding yourself that you are a queen, you are a king, you deserve to be respected, you deserve to have that princess or prince treatment, and you do not need to put up with people treating you less than that. There are so many good people in the world, there are so many nice people, and I can't think of one person that deserves to treat someone else like that, you know what I mean? So hold your self-respect. Don't allow anybody, no matter how good looking they are, no matter, I don't know, how much history you have with them, what status they are. Like, I feel like there's so many things that could make you look past the way that someone is treating you. But truly, I feel like respect is the baseline for everything. So it doesn't matter what they have or who they are. If they are not respecting you, they might need to be kicked to the curb. They might need a few warnings, okay? So anyways, I'm just gonna leave you guys there with that. I hope you enjoyed this episode and that this was helpful in some way, that this inspired you, maybe to be a bitch here and there, I don't know. And I hope that if you listened to this episode and examples came up in your mind, or maybe you clicked on this episode with something on your mind specifically, I'm sending you all my good luck, all my good energy, and I hope that your solution gets resolved and that you can do it with confidence and with clarity, and that the other person takes it well. And just reminding yourself that it's not easy, and if it's not something that you've grown up doing, or it's not something that you're so comfortable with doing, it's not going to be comforting. But like we said earlier, on the other side of discomfort is lifelong self-respect. And that's what we're aiming for. So anyways, I'm gonna leave you guys there. I love you guys. You're epic and awesome. And thank you for listening to me up. I will see you guys soon.